the correlation between the characteristics of globalization, social injustice and poverty, poor of lack of education and corruption and anomie, and their association with drug trafficking and abuse. First, let's talk about the correlation between characteristics of globalization, social injustice and poverty, poor of lack of education and corruption and anomie. So first, globalization. Globalization can exacerbate social injustice and poverty, especially when its benefits are unevenly distributed. These inequalities often depend by the poor education, which traps people in cycles of disadvantage. Second is corruption. So corruption flourishes in environments with weak institutions, poverty, and low levels of education, further entrenching social injustice. Anomie. Anomie arises as people become alienated from the social order, feeling disconnected and disillusioned by a system that seems unresponsive to their needs, often due to the compounded effects of globalization, poverty, and corruption. Together, these factors are form vicious cycle where one issues feed into another, making it difficult to address any single factors without tackling the others.
Now, let's talk about how these factors associated with drug trafficking and drug abuse. But first, let's define drug trafficking and drug abuse. Drug trafficking. Drug trafficking refers to the legal production, distribution, and sale of substances that are subject to drug prohibition laws. While drug abuse or substance abuse refers to the misuse of legal or illegal substances in a way that is harmful to a person's physical, mental, or social health. Drug trafficking and abuse are closely tied to globalization, social injustice and poverty, poor education, corruption, and anomie in several interconnected ways. Here's how each of these factors contribute to and is associated with drug trafficking and abuse. First, globalization and drug trafficking. Increased global connectivity, globalization facilitates the movement of goods and people across borders, making it easier for drug traffickers to exploit international trade or routes and financial system. Transnational networks. Drug cartels operate across borders using the same tools of globalization, technology, transportation, and communication networks to expand their operations. Second is social injustice and poverty. Economic desperation. In region plagued by poverty and social injustice, people may turn to drug production or trafficking as a means of survival. Marginalized communities, socially excluded groups with limited access to resources are more likely to engage in drug trafficking or fall victim to drug abuse as they lack better alternatives. Impact of inequality. Drug abuse often arises in areas of high social inequality, where feelings of hopelessness and frustration may lead people to drugs as an escape mechanism from their harsh realities.
Third, poor or lack of education. Vulnerability to exploitation. A lack of education makes individuals more vulnerable to being exploited by drug traffickers, especially in impoverished communities. Lack of awareness. Poor education can also contribute to higher rates of drug abuse, as individuals may lack awareness of the dangers of drug use or the long-term consequences on health and well-being. Limited options for economic mobility. Without education, people have fewer career opportunities, making the drug trade a more tempting option for earning money. Fourth, corruption and drug trafficking. Enabling of criminal networks. Corruption within law enforcement, the judiciary, and government institutions often enables drug trafficking to flourish. Corrupt officials may accept bribes to overlook illegal activities or actively participate in drug operations. Weak governance. In countries where corruption is rampant, drug cartels can gain significant power and influence, further weakening state institutions and creating lawless environments. Money laundering and political ties. Drug trafficking generates vast sums of money, which can be laundered through corrupt banking systems and invested in legal enterprises. Fifth, anomie in drug abuse. Breakdown of social norms. In societies experiencing anomie, a breakdown of social norms, values, and community ties, drug abuse becomes more common as individuals feel disconnected, hopeless, or alienated from society. Increase in criminal behavior. In places where law enforcement is weak and social order has broken down, drug trafficking often becomes a viable criminal enterprise for those disillusioned by society and its systems.
The interconnectedness of these factors. One of these is globalization, which create both opportunities and vulnerabilities for drug trafficking. It opens up new markets and routes for drugs to be transported while exposing economically disadvantaged regions to exploitation by traffickers. Next is social injustice and poverty. Drive individuals into the drug trade as it offers economic benefits in the face of systematic inequality. Marginalized communities often experience higher rates of drug abuse as a result of frustration, lack of opportunity, and economic despair. Next, we have poor education. Poor education leads to a cycle of disadvantage where individuals, unable to access better employment or understand the risk, become involved in drug trafficking or fall victim to drug abuse. Next, we have corruption. Perpetuates drug trafficking, allowing to thrive in regions where law enforcement is compromised. Without accountability, drug networks can operate with impunity, leading to increased crime and social breakdown. Next, we have enemy fuels. These enemy fuels both drug trafficking and abuse as individuals feel disconnected from society and its norms. This breakdown in social cohesion creates fertile ground for the drug trade to thrive and for the substance abuse to become a form of coping. In this way, drug trafficking and abuse are deeply tied to the broader issue of globalization, poverty, corruption, and social breakdown, creating a reinforcing cycle that is difficult to break without addressing the underlying causes.